In most FPS games, especially those story-driven like horrors, interactions are at the very core of the game. So in this video let's learn how to add them to our game. Bear in mind this is a second episode of the FPS horror series, so for the initial character controller you may want to check this tutorial. Hello fantastic people, this is Peter and let's get straight to it. First we need something we can press, like a button. We can create one using two simple cubes. I'm adding mine using the ProBuilder package. I love it because it allows me not only to create shapes quickly but also adjust their colors. Then we need something that will react to the button press, for example light. We'll start with a simple interactable that invokes any action anytime it's used. I'm going to call it, well, simply interactable. However, before I put there any code, I first create a interactable interface. This will be used later to detect different types of interactables, simplifying our code a lot. The interface will have only one simple method, interact. Then we implement the interface in our simple interactable script, and because we do that, we also need to implement the method. I think this is a perfect opportunity to use Unity events. That way, anytime the interaction occurs, we can call any method on any object. If we want to use the Unity events, we have to remember to import the Unity engine.events namespace. Then, in our interact method, we simply invoke the onInteract event. To be able to test it straight away, I'm going to add the attribute context menu, which will allow me to call this particular method from the inspector. You'll see what I mean in a second. Then I add the script into the button object. To add a new action, I click on this small plus icon. Now into the object reference I drag my point light, and when the button is clicked, I want to disable it, so I'm going to change the enabled to false. Now I enter the play mode, and from the inspector I invoke our interact method. Fantastic! Everything works as expected. Just so you know, you can also invoke the method not being in the play mode. However, the problem then is the effects will persist. So we would have to manually re-enable the light. In this case it doesn't seem like a problem. But imagine having 20 actions instead of one. Well, that would be pain in the... Okay, now the exciting part. Let's create the interaction controller. The whole idea is to shoot a ray from the center of the camera and check if it detected any interactable. To do that, we of course need the camera transform. We can assign it in the awake method. Now we need a little bit of settings. First of all, we need the interaction distance. Anything that's further away won't be detected. Then we create a field for layer mask, because we want to detect objects only in certain layers. And then of course we need input action reference to be able to react to the input. And let's also add a reference to the interactable we are currently hovering over. In the update we'll have detect interactable method, which we'll create now. First, let's define the ray. It will be starting in the center of the camera and it will be shot in the direction it's looking. Then let's create a variable to store the detected interactable, and then let's perform the actual raycast. As a first parameter we provide our ray. Then we use a special combination of keywords, out, var, named of the variable. Simply saying, we define here a new variable called hit, and the word out means that the raycast method will output something in that variable. So on the one hand, we are using the physics.raycast as a condition, which means it returns boolean. On the other hand, however, the smart mechanism with the keyword out allows us to get one more value. And that value is of completely different type. Then if we hit something, we try to get a component out of it. Because we defined the variable as interactable type, the tryGetComponent method understands that and won't assign to it anything else. Just to let you know, that will detect and assign any script that implements the interactable interface. Now, if the currently detected interactable is different than what we store, we just update our field. Great, that should be enough to detect interactables. Let's now handle the player's input. In the onEnable method we need to subscribe to the performed event of the interact action. And on disable we of course need to unsubscribe it. Okay, let's now implement the handle interaction method. Because we use it with the action events, it has to have a parameter of type inputAction.callbackContext. And inside of it, we simply check if the current interactable is not null, and if it's not, we call its interact method. Now inside Unity, I'm going to move the button into the interactables layer. If you don't have that layer, you can add it by clicking Add Layer. Now I'm going to add the interaction controller script into our crosshair object. For the interaction layer, I'm going to select interactables. And for my interact action, I'm going to select one of the default actions. Please bear in mind that by default the interact action requires player to hold the button for a while. You can change that by removing the hold interaction. Let's test it out. Fantastic. Let's now create an interactable that will be able to toggle. For the naming consistency, let's call it toggable interactable. Now it of course has to extend the mono behavior and implement our interactable interface. Then, because we want two different sets of actions depending if the toggle is on or off, let's create two different Unity events, on open and on close. Now we also need a field to store the information if the toggle is on or off. Then inside of our interact method, if the toggle is open, we invoke the onClose event. Otherwise, we invoke the onOpen event. Then we change isOpen to the opposite value. Then let's create our toggle. I duplicate the whole button frame and rename it to the toggle frame. Then I rename the actual button to toggle, rotate it 45 degrees, and then remove the simple interactable script. Then I duplicate the toggle and set its rotation to 135 degrees. I think for the clarity it will be easier to name them toggle on and toggle off. I want the toggle on to be hidden by default, so I disable the object. Then to the toggle frame I add the toggable interactable script. Now using the Unity events I add the actions. On open I show the toggle off and hide the toggle on. On close, the other way around. Then we need something to react to our action. Let's duplicate the light and change its color to red. Then we enable it on open and disable it on close. Let's test it out. Oh no, we forgot something. If you know what, leave the answer in the comment. We need to put the toggle frame object in the interactables layer. And it is almost working. We have two little problems. The first one is that when we first interact with the toggle, nothing happens. This is because of the way we set up our actions. We can either swap the actions on each event, or simply check the isOpen checkbox. And the second little problem is, when we interact with our frame, everything is okay. But when the crosshair is over the toggle itself, nothing happens. That's because the toggle colliders are before the frames collider. The solution is very simple. Let's just remove their colliders. Beautiful. Everything is working as expected. I hope you found this tutorial useful. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Have a fantastic day. Love you and bye bye.